Island, New York, and as far west as Stockton, California, and all the points in between. For those of you listening to us around the world, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever greeting best suits the time zone that you are presently in. There are several things that you can do to stop the spread of respiratory diseases such as COVID-19. One, wash your hands with warm soap or water for at least 20 seconds. Now, if you don't know what 20 seconds are, just sing happy birthday to yourself, and when you've completed that song, you've completed 20 seconds. Number two, cover your mouth when you sneeze. That's right, cover your mouth when you sneeze. That stops the spread of germs, and then that also reminds you to wash your hands, like we just said. Also, wipe down frequently touched items and objects with some type of disinfectant, and do like what I did on my way to the station today when I had to stop at the gas station. After I pumped the gas, I do have some hand sanitizer in my car so that you can hand sanitize your hands after you use the pump, since you do not know who touched it prior to you touching it. Stay away from people who are sick, and you please stay at home when you are sick. That game, that concert, that worship service, that job, that event, whatever it is that you think can't go on unless you're there, I've got some sad news for you. It's going to go on regardless of whether you're there or not. And this was brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station, No Static Radio, where we don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise, powered by Google, sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines, and Senior Medical.
The Dedicated Senior Medical.
Dedicated Senior Medical, thank you. The Dedicated Senior Medical. If you are in the Cleveland area on the first or third Saturday of each month, there's some great news for you today. Now, you missed out on it today if you didn't take advantage of it, because the time has passed for it since this is the first Saturday. But you still have for the third Saturday of this month. And what is it that you're talking about, Jeff? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. What I'm talking about is that on the first and third Saturday of each month in the city of Cleveland, Ohio, at 6812 Woodland Avenue, they are giving away a free bag of groceries between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Now listen, there is nothing that you have to do to qualify to get the bag of groceries. You do not have to show proof of residence. You do not have to show proof of income. You do not have to show proof of anything. The only thing you have to show is up, and that you show up and you get a free bag of groceries, no questions asked. But not only that, in addition to the free bag of groceries, you get free clothing for adults and children. That's right, for you and your children, you get free clothing. But it doesn't stop there either, ladies and gentlemen, because if you are there between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1:30 p.m., you get a free hot lunch. Now listen, you can't beat that. Free bag of groceries, free clothing, and a free hot lunch that is yummy to your tummy. And you go home satisfied, clothed, and a free bag of groceries. And where is this, you ask again? Is at 6812 Woodland Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio, on the first and third Saturday of each month from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we want to thank the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, Major Care Ministries, and also Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, who houses this event each month. For those of you that are new to this show, this is what we do. We talk politics and sports. I throw out some topics out on the table. I give my take on said topics. And then we invite you to call in at 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. We'd love to hear from you today. Our phones are working, so you can call in. Here is what we're going to talk about today. These following topics. Number one, there's a mess. This house is a mess. And no, I'm not talking about your personal house or my house. This house is a mess, and you'll hear in just a few moments what house I'm talking about. But it's in a major disrepair, and it's a mess, debris all over the place. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Donald Trump being a clear and present danger to the future of democracy here in the United States of America. We have some very strong thoughts and opinions on that. We're also going to do a preview of the Major League Baseball Division Series playoffs that get underway today. There are 4 games today. One just started in Baltimore between the Orioles and Texas Rangers, and there are 3 other games to follow today. The Minnesota Twins at the Houston Astros, Philadelphia Phillies at the Atlanta Braves, and the Arizona Diamondbacks at the Los Angeles Dodgers. So we're going to give our predictions rather, on those 4 series, who we think are going to advance to the league championship series in the respective leagues. Then we're also going to give our predictions for 5 NFL games this week. We chose 5 games this week that we're going to look at, and we're going to give predictions on those as well. And then we will have our hero and our zero of the week. So that's what we have on the table today. Again, if there's something that you want to talk about, that you want to get off your chest that I did not mention as one of our topics, feel free to call with that as well. We'll take that call as well. Now, here are the ground rules. You can call, but you can only make 1 call per program. And there is a time limit on your call, and I will let you know when you're going too long. But as long as you are making sense, you're cogent, and you're on topic, that's fine. You do not even have to agree with my take on these topics, which is good because that makes for good dialogue. How many of you, I'm sure everybody out here listening does this each year, and that is at the beginning of the spring, and sometimes even at the end of the summer, the beginning of the fall, you do what's known as spring cleaning or fall cleaning to clean up from the summer. I'm sure all of us do it. One of those two, if not both of those. You wash the windows, you mop the floors, the floorboards down. We used to do that anyway every week. You wash the walls down. You may get the carpet shampooed, clear out clothes that you're not using anymore that are in the attic or the closets and store them up to give away to various charitable organizations. In other words, you go through your entire house because you see that your house is in need of cleaning, especially in the spring after the winter time. And sometimes, as I said, at this time of year in the fall after the summer. What you don't want to do, though, is to have your house as a mess. Because when your house is a mess, then it makes it difficult to navigate around your house because you're always stepping around or over something, or something's always in the way, or you're tripping over something because something's out of place, or when your house is a mess, you don't want to have guests over, you don't want to have company over because you don't want people to see your house in a state of disarray. Well, sadly, ladies and gentlemen, the House of Representatives of the United States of America, aka the People's House, is a hot garbage mess. This past week, the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, for the first time in United States history, the seat was voted to be vacated. So at this time, the People's House, the person who is second in line, I should say, to the presidency, only behind the vice president should something happen. That seat is vacant right now. And despite how you may have felt about Kevin McCarthy, and if you're a regular listener to this show, you are pretty well aware of our thoughts on Kevin McCarthy. We dubbed him Little Kev because he did not have the gumption and the political courage enough to be a man of his convictions and stick to his convictions after January 6th, where he rightfully blamed then President Trump, for the events on January 6th and laid them squarely at his feet until he went down to Mar-a-Lago some weeks later and bent the knee and uh, figuratively kissed the ring of the ex-president and fall back in favor with him and some of his other moves. But despite how you feel one way or the other about Kevin McCarthy, this was not a good day in the history of the United States of America to have this seat vacated. Leading the charge to vacate the seat was Congressman from Florida, Republican Congressman from Florida, member of the Freedom Caucus, interesting name for that group, but member of the Freedom Caucus, Matt Gaetz. Vote was held, and the 218 votes that was necessary to vacate that seat were there, and so Kevin McCarthy was voted out. Now, Matthew Gaetz got a lot of criticism from his Republican colleagues, and I want you all to see both the irony and the hypocrisy of their criticism when it comes to Matthew Gaetz. Matthew Gaetz was criticized by his fellow Republican members of the Congress as being an opportunist, as being a narcissist, as being one who's not really concerned about policy or making laws or legislating, that being accused of being a grifter, that he led the front, was the front man, if you will, to vacate the seat of the Speaker of the House, that he was doing this only as a fundraiser for a future possible run as governor in the state of Florida. And you know, folks, all of those thoughts or accusations are correct. Matt Gaetz is a grifter. Matt Gaetz is an opportunist. Matt Gaetz doesn't really, at least in his tenure in the House, has not really tried to legislate. He's been a conspiracy theorist. He has been a strong supporter of former President Trump, for whatever that means. He has been a grifter. He is a narcissist. All of those things are true. However, what Mr. Gaetz' fellow Republican colleagues failed to recognize, or conveniently forgot to recognize, is that the man who is at the head of their party, the man who is 30 points ahead, at least, some polls even having further ahead than that in the Republican primary, the man who was twice impeached, has been indicted on 91 felony counts, has been charged by a federal judge of fraud in New York by overestimating his personal properties, and that case is being heard right now, is all of those same things that they talked about Matthew Gaetz, but even on a higher level and to a greater degree. But when Mr. Trump was doing all of these things, these same people who are accusing Representative Gaetz of all of the things that I just said, of being self-serving, of caring about no one but himself, and etc. These same people were eerily silent when it came to Donald Trump. And so this is a classic case, ladies and gentlemen, of the chickens coming home to roost. The monster that the Republican Party created under the leadership and auspices of Donald Trump, the MAGA party that it has become. The very few moderates that are in the Republican Party are either no longer holding office, like Adam Kinzinger, for example, congressman from Illinois, and I wouldn't even consider Liz Cheney a moderate, but because she stood up to and opposed this MAGA majority, she's out. Mitt Romney, who's not in the Congress, was in the Senate, is not going to run for Senate anymore. So those who are moderate or sensible or what you want to call fiscal conservative or Reagan conservative Republicans or Bush, whatever you want to name them, they are either no longer serving in office or they are so fearful politically of being primaried that they go along to get along. And so this monster that they created, this monster that is created has now risen up and turned on them, and now they're being devoured by the monster that they created. This is what's going on right now here in the House of Representatives. Now, the question is, could the Democrats have prevented this? The answer is yes, they could have, but let's examine why the Democrats didn't either vote, enough of them vote to give the necessary votes to Kevin McCarthy to stay in the position of Speaker of the House. Let's look at that, or why they didn't just vote present, which their votes wouldn't have counted for or against, and then the Republicans would have had enough votes for him to stay in his position. But let's examine that. But before we do, let's look how and see how we got in this position in the first place. There was a 15 rounds, and no, it wasn't boxing, it was 15 rounds of voting, if you remember, back in January, over a 2-day period before Kevin McCarthy was finally confirmed as the Speaker of the House. And for him to get this position, he made so many deals, so many compromises with these Freedom Caucus members, with the very ultra MAGA, because the majority of the party is MAGA, but the ultra MAGA wing, he made so many deals and compromises with them that basically he was a puppet, if you will, as a Speaker of the House. Really had no power. He was Speaker of the House in name only, but he really wielded no power, no influence, because if he did anything to displease any member of this ultra MAGA wing of the Republican Party within the House of Representatives, then a vote was going to be taken to vacate. And listen, only one member had to put the vote out there. That was the deal that was made in order for him to get the votes that he needed back in January to become the Speaker of the House. So the lesson here is this, folks, is that you can want something, but do not want something so bad where you're willing to compromise everything that you have, literally sell your soul in order to get it. Now, where Kevin McCarthy went wrong in the eyes of these ultra MAGA people, that is that he brokered a deal and worked with the other side of the aisle in order to broker a deal to raise the debt ceiling so that the government would not shut down last week. And because he did that, then this ultra MAGA wing of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives, led by frontman Matt Gaetz, put the one vote out there to bring it on the floor, to have a vote to see if they were going to be able to vacate the chair, and that's what happened. Right? So, as you've heard me say, if you're a regular listener to this show, I have dubbed many within both the House and the Senate as political units. And, You know what a eunuch is, and so because Kevin McCarthy was a political eunuch, was spineless, basically sold out everything that all of his integrity in order to get this position. Now he's voted out. Now, back to my question that I asked just a few moments ago. Could the Democrats have done anything within the House of Representatives in order to prevent this from happening?
My heart will not fear.
The answer, one second, did I hear some feedback? Is there a device or something that's on?
The war break out against me.
Is there a device or something that's on?
Even then, I will be confident.
I'm sorry, folks. I thought I heard some feedback or something that was going on.
One thing I asked from.
But what I was saying is, yes, could they have prevented this? Yes, they could have. But why did this not happen? Well, there are several reasons, and let me just illustrate what these reasons are. Okay, so number one, Kevin McCarthy did things as the Speaker of the House that infuriated Democrats, that made it to the point where they didn't feel like they could trust him. Number one, he allowed the very bogus inquiry of impeachment to Joe Biden to come up on the floor. And listen, even one of the Ultra MAGA Freedom Party Freedom Caucus members, Matt Gaetz to be exact, meeting with a group of supporters, said that this whole Joe Biden impeachment proceeding was frivolous and really had no merit to it. And if you follow that, and even though I disagree, I should say, with Matt Gaetz 99.9% of the time, this is 0.1% of the time that I do agree with him, because it was frivolous. Nonetheless, Kevin McCarthy let this come on the floor. Why? I'm going to get to the why in that in just a moment. Not only that, but also Kevin McCarthy also allowed the equally frivolous committee hearings on the weaponization of the government, where the government is not any more weaponized now than it was at any other time. But because of fear of the Freedom Caucus members and the people that he made the deals with and compromises with in order to become the Speaker in the first place, he allowed these distractions, these waste of time to go on, instead of presiding over a House that was trying to help the American public and their constituents by introducing legislation that could help the constituents, right? So we had that whole exercise of a waste of a time, of nonsense, going on and on, proceeding on and on and on with these ridiculous hearings about the weaponization of government. And we talked about this on the show, where they took a field trip to New York City to observe what the district attorney was doing there and observe his cases and what have you. And you have to ask yourself this question: why then was this waste of time, impeachment proceedings, inquiry going on, and this waste of time weaponization of government hearings going on? Well, I mean, come on, we all know the reason why, but just in case you just crawl from under a rock and you don't know, the House of Representatives, under the control of Kevin McCarthy, with the slim majority of the Republican Party, were doing the bidding of their leader of their party, and that's Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump had been impeached. Okay, and if you look at what he was impeached for, the quid pro quo on the first one, where he made as he stated, the beautiful call to the Ukrainian President Zelensky, telling him, now mind you, just a reminder, I'm not going to go too much into this because this is old news, but if you remember, the Congress had passed appropriations for aid for Stinger missiles to go to Ukraine, and they had been approved already, and Donald Trump was going to hold it up because he called Zelensky and told him, if you want this aid, you have to give me some dirt on Joe Biden. Now, he called that a beautiful call. But I'll let you, who have common sense, can figure out what that really was. And then, of course, the second time he was impeached was because of his actions on January 6th, where he was the leader of the insurrection and the coup, which we're about to find out as soon as that case starts a trial with Special Counsel Jack Smith. So because Donald Trump had 2 impeachments against him, and he is the leading candidate for the Republican Party in the 2024 election, he had the House of Representatives do his bidding for him by coming up with this bogus, meritless impeachment proceeding that even Matt Gaetz said was frivolous, that witnesses that they brought before to testify basically said that that had no merit to it. But this was all done as a distraction. The weaponization of government, another distraction. And again, this was done at the bidding of Donald Trump because federal agencies like the FBI went to Mar-a-Lago and seized the documents that he lied about turning in, that he didn't turn in, that he had on 3 occasions had the chance to turn in and never turned them in, and as I said, then lied about having them. So because the FBI raided his home and got the documents out, we're going to talk about that later on the second topic of our show. We're going to talk about that later. So because of that, and because of the prosecutions of those who participated in the insurrection on January 6th, because of all of that, again, to have a distraction, again, to do the bidding of Donald Trump, we have this waste of a time, weaponization of government hearings on Capitol Hill that resulted in nothing but a bunch of rhetoric, posturing and grandstanding, and was a lot of noise, but resulted in nothing other than a waste of time. Then, as recent as last Sunday, on Meet the Press, not on Meet the Press, on Face the Nation, Kevin McCarthy was on. Now, this was after the package had been, the bill had been passed within the House of Representatives to keep the government operating. When he was being interviewed on Face the Nation just 6 days ago, Kevin McCarthy bold-faced lied on the interview and said that the Democrats voted against the bill that would keep the government running, and that there was a Republicans who passed. And that was a lie, because the Democrats voted almost unanimously for it to keep the government operating. Okay, so not taking sides here. What I'm doing is I'm just presenting the facts. I'm just laying out the case and let you decide. Then Kevin McCarthy said that he was not going to, quote, sell his soul. Interesting choice of words, given all the deals that he made in order to become Speaker of the House in the first place, but I digress. Was not going to sell his soul to the Democrats in order to hold on to the gavel. So those who say that the Democrats, could they have prevented this? Yes, they could have. Could they have enough of them voted with the Republicans who did vote to keep Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House? Could they have done it and averted this whole mess? Yes, they could have done that. But I can understand their argument based on the facts that I just gave you as to why they would not trust Speaker McCarthy based on what I just told you. I mean, put yourself in that position. Would you vote to save a man who went on national television on a very popular news program, political program, Meet the Press, been around, I keep saying Meet the Press, Face the Nation, I apologize. But both Meet the Press and Face the Nation have been around for eons. Go on this show 2 days prior to the vote and lie on you. Would you, if you were a Democrat in the House of Representatives, would you vote to save the job of a man who allowed these frivolous investigations that I just talked about? Would you vote to save the job of a man who said that he wasn't going to say, quote, sell his soul, in other words, work across the aisle to try to keep his job by making some type of compromise deal, with the government, with the Democrats, in order to keep his seat? So they said, fine. You don't want our help? You want to go on national TV and lie? You want to preside over a house where you don't have control? You can't control those under you? Because listen, Nancy Pelosi has been Speaker of the House when she's had a slim margin, just like Kevin McCarthy, and yet for some reason she was able to keep her people under control. Why is that? Why was she able to do it and little Kev wasn't? Well, one is Nancy Pelosi was dealing with people who were not conspiracy theorists and grandstanding and just crazy, way out, far out politics and policy wise that we hear so much from the MAGA wing, that they weren't MAGAites. I'll just put it like that. I'll just simplify it and say they weren't MAGA cultists. So where does that bring us now? Well, there have been two names that have been mentioned as replacements for Kevin McCarthy. By the way, you're listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. It's 35 minutes after the hour. It's 35 minutes after the hour. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. Love to hear from you on this topic and others. So the two names that we've heard since the ouster of Kevin McCarthy are Jim Jordan of Ohio and Steve Scalise of Louisiana. Now, let me give you a little background on both of these guys. I'll start with Congressman Scalise first. If you remember the tragic event that happened a few years ago when there was a congressional baseball game and the Republican team was practicing and the shooter got in the stands and shot Mr. Scalise, and thankfully he survived. But Steve Scalise is also, and as I said, he's a congressman from Louisiana. Also, this is the same Steve Scalise who once said that he is David Duke without the baggage. Now, those of you who don't know who David Duke is the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. Okay? And don't make this stuff up, folks. I'm just reporting the news. That was some years ago. Steve Scalise said that he's David Duke without the baggage. Steve Scalise has been an election denier. Steve Scalise is a supporter of President Trump. Now, what Steve Scalise is not is that he is in favor of supporting Ukraine in their struggle against Russia. So he's not part of that part of the MAGA wing who wants to see aid cut off to Ukraine because basically, well, I won't even say they don't want to come out and admit it. Sometimes they do just come right out and say that basically they're supporting Vladimir Putin in his endeavors to overtake Ukraine and to eventually, this is not me saying this, is what Putin said, this is his eventual goal, is to restore the old Soviet Union. He's trying to get the band back together again. So he knows if he can conquer Ukraine, that Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Georgia, they'll be next. So Steve Scalise does support Ukraine and support and financial and military aid to Ukraine. Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is representative from Ohio, from a district that's not too far from where I sit now. I sit in Cleveland, Ohio. He represents two of the northwestern suburbs of the city of Cleveland, and that is Lorain and Elyria. Okay, that they're in Lorain County, which is the county that is right next to Cuyahoga County, where Cleveland is. Prior to Jim Jordan being in politics, and this is not a smear job, this is just to give the background because this is pertinent to what we're talking about here. But prior to Jim Jordan entering into politics, Jim Jordan was on the staff of my alma mater, The Ohio State University. He was an assistant to the coach on the wrestling team. And the coach at that time has proven that he was sexually abusing some of the male wrestlers there at Ohio State. And several of these wrestlers that were abused alleged that Jim Jordan knew about this and failed to report it. Now, he has denied this, but there's been more than one of the former OSU wrestlers who have come out and said this, that Jim Jordan knew what was going on and failed to report it. So, since this hasn't been proven one way or another in a court of law, we have to just say that this is alleged. So you can make your own conclusions as far as that's concerned. Jim Jordan was the lead dog on the waste of time, frivolous weaponization of government hearings. He's also been out front on the Biden impeachment. He is another election denier. He, by the way, asked President Trump after January 6th, and this is interesting, and I'm anticipating when the case that by Jack Smith regarding January 6th starts to take place, when that trial starts to take place. I'm really interested to see what facts come out, because not too long after January 6th, curiously, Jim Jordan asked Donald Trump to pardon him. Oh, what pardon him? Pardon for what? Now, we don't know what he wanted to be pardoned from, but he did ask then President, who was on his way out, Trump, to pardon him. So, if you ask someone to pardon you, then there's something that you have done or been involved with that would be a pardonable offense. To no one's surprise, of course, Jim Jordan is the one who Donald Trump supports. And a vote is supposed to take place next Wednesday, I believe, to replace the Speaker of the House, although many, including yours truly, do not believe that either one of these two gentlemen are going to get enough votes in order to become the Speaker. So you have an interim Speaker, if you will, but that seat is vacant. As I said, it's curious how this happens, how the chickens came home to roost, how, as I said, I saw interviews with Republican congressmen that attacked Matt Gaetz, saying that, one said that, he was consorting with a 17-year-old, and that's an alleged charge that was brought out a couple of years ago. Hasn't been proven in a court of law yet, but so I have to say allegedly, probably, most likely, but hasn't been proven. Also, another one of his colleagues talked about him bragging about his sexual conquests on the floor of the Congress between them. And again, I believe all of that. And I'm no fan of Matt Gaetz. I am in concordance with all the things that were said about him. But again, it just speaks of hypocrisy and a duplicitous nature when the leader of your party, who you won't criticize, who you won't call to task, who you won't call on the carpet, who you continue to support, many of you, even with the 91 indictments, even with the fraud case, bench trial fraud case, where the evidence is there that he overinflated the value of his property in order to secure loans. You guys are strangely silent on that. You were strangely silent when he called for the execution of former Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, General Mark Milley. So yeah, I agree with you about Matt Gaetz. He is all of those things that you said and then some. But folks, do you see the duplicitous nature? Do you see the hypocritical nature of all of this? And again, this is not to support Matt Gaetz, but again, it's the principle of reaping and sowing. When you sow seeds of duplicity, when you sow seeds of hypocrisy, when you sow seeds of corruption and frivolousness, not if harvest, but when the harvest comes, those are going to be the crop that you're going to reap. And right now, that is what is happening within the People's House, the House of Representatives. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. So what's the answer? What's the solution? How is this mess going to get cleaned up? Frankly, folks, I don't know. I really don't know because, as I said, I don't think Jim Jordan or Steve Scalise, one, are going to have enough votes to become the Speaker of the House. The Republicans are not going to make a deal where enough of them cross over to vote for Hakeem Jeffries to become Speaker of the House. That's the minority leader of the House, Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries. That's not going to happen. So I don't know what's going to happen. We even heard the insanely crazy idea that was floated earlier this week by, surprise to no one's surprise, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that Donald Trump become the Speaker of the House because you don't have to be a member to be the Speaker. But their own rule, I believe it was Rule 26 or Rule 28, that they passed earlier this year would preclude that from happening unless they change the rule. That anyone who has been indicted, has more than 2 felony indictments against them, can't serve as Speaker of the House. Well, Donald Trump has that and 89 more. Of course, I'm sure that his minions and his underlings in the House would vote to overturn that. So we even heard that. So what is the solution to this? The solution is to get a speaker who will have control, who can work with both sides of the aisle. And also, solution is to change the rule and get rid of this ridiculous rule where one member of the House can put the question and make the call to vacate the speaker's seat. That's what needs to be done. Let's see what's going to happen. Which brings me to our next topic, and that is Donald Trump being a very clear and present danger to democracy here in the U.S. Now, I'm going to give you some facts here. I'm not going to give you opinion. I'm going to show you the danger of this man. I'm going to start with this, though, and this is the reason why I'm doing this, because I'm trying to get people to wake up and understand. A recent poll that was released that I saw earlier this week, I believe it was a New York Times poll, showed that if the presidential election was held today, 51% of the people said they would support Joe Biden, 49% would support Trump. So that's within the 3 percentage point margin of error, which basically is saying that right now that election next year is a draw. Why do I bring this up a year out in advance? I bring this up because I'm sounding the alarm. I bring this up because I want to get all of you that are listening to this broadcast to at least hear what I am saying, what I feel is the most important issue facing America today. It is not the economy. It is not inflation. Those are important. It is not in the rate of employment or rate of unemployment, I should say. It's not climate control, despite the wildfires that we saw out west earlier this year, what happened in Maui, on the island of Maui earlier this year, the Canadian wildfires and the air pollution that caused and the respiratory problems that caused to people here in the United States. The rash of hurricanes we've seen how the temperature of the oceans have gone up, which make the hurricanes who get their energy from a hotter ocean, so it's make them more frequent and more intense. But as bad as that is, climate control is not the greatest issue. Gun violence. If you're a regular listener to the show, you've heard me talk about almost ad nauseum about how we need sensible gun control in this country. Gun violence is not the major issue. Abortion is not the major issue. All of these issues, the education, the infrastructure, I mean, I can go on and on. All of those are important issues, yes. I'm not trying to poo-poo those at all. But the most important issue on the ballot next year is democracy in the United States. Because there's one candidate on the ballot that if he regains power, if he is reelected, will end democracy in this country as we know it. This is not my opinion. This came from the man's own mouth. And this is one time that he's actually telling the truth. Because Donald Trump said basically that he is running to exact retribution and revenge on those who he perceives are his enemies. He's not running to make the education system better. He's not running to decrease gun violence. He's not running to do something about climate control. He's not running to either restore Roe v. Wade or to destroy it or whatever it is. He's not running for any of that. He's running for retribution. He's running for revenge. And let me just do a parallel line, a timeline, if you will. In 2016, when he first ran for president, his whole thing was what? Lock her up, talking about Hillary Clinton, lock her up, right? It went from lock her up to hang Mike Pence, because Mike Pence would not overturn a fair and free election. And it went from hang Mike Pence to execute Mark Milley, because General Mark Milley, when he was the Joint Chief of Staff under Trump, and his term just expired here just about a week and a half or so, it might have been last week, to assure China that there was no danger of a nuclear attack, called his colleague in China and told him basically that there's not going to be a nuclear attack, that, basically I am keeping the president under control regarding that. Trump said that was a treasonous act. That's curious. He should be familiar with treasonous acts, given his track record. Given his track record, where it came out this week that there's a possibility that he showed or talked about nuclear submarine secrets to an Australian billionaire. Shared that with him, which that's a violation of the Espionage Act. But I could do a whole program on Trump and treasonous acts. See, what you all have to realize about this man, and this is not a partisan take. This is reality take. What you have to realize is anytime he accuses somebody of something, that's really something that he's doing. Just look at the track record. But he is a clear and present danger to democracy as we know it. As I said, he said that he's running to get retribution and get revenge. He said that if he is reelected, that NBC and Comcast should be, well, maybe even say this if he's reelected. He just said this now. The NBC and Comcast, which is a huge media outlet, should be, quote, thoroughly investigated, thoroughly scrutinized, and thoroughly investigated, is what he said. NBC and Comcast, MSNBC. Now, why is it that? Are they doing something illegal? No. Are they doing something immoral? No. Are they doing something against the Constitution of the United States of America? No. The reason that he's saying that is that NBC, along with the other major networks, CBS, ABC, CNN, report the truth about him. And so because they report the truth about him, then they should be thoroughly scrutinized and thoroughly investigated. And he's hinted at that if he is reelected, that he is going to take over the FCC, where he is going to attempt to get their license to broadcast suspended. That is a threat to the freedom of the press, which is a threat to democracy in this country as we know it. He called for as I said, for the execution of the former Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley. He's threatened the judge in his fraud case. He's threatened the judge in his soon-to-be case regarding January 6th. He's threatened all these judges except the one judge in Florida, Judge Canna, who will be presiding over the documents trial. The reason why he hadn't threatened her is because she's an appointee of his, and she's made rulings that have favored him in the past that were highly criticized by her colleagues on both sides of the aisle when it comes to whether they were Trump appointed judges or Obama or Biden appointed judges. She was highly scrutinized and criticized for decisions she made in the past that favored Donald Trump. It got so bad that even in this case right now that is going on in Manhattan regarding his fraud, that the judge in the case had to put a limited gag order on him because he went on his media, his Truth Social, interesting name, Truth, something he's unfamiliar with, Truth Social, and put the name of the clerk for the judge out in public, Judge Ignabaum, I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing his name, I'm sure. Put her name on Truth Social, put her picture on Truth Social, and why was he doing that? He did that because he knows that that's a dog whistle to his followers to do what? To go and try and intimidate her. As would happen with the two election workers, two black women election workers in Atlanta in 2020 when he put their names out and they were harassed. People coming to their door, knocking on their door, harassing them, and that's part of the RICO case that District Attorney Fonnie Willis in Fulton County has brought. That's part of that case. This is a dangerous man. His words have meaning. His words have effect. Let me show you an example of just the other day on Fox News. And I'm going to play a clip of this. Marie, can you get that clip queued up? We're going to play a clip of this. I wish you all could see it too. By the way, the name of the judge I was talking about is Arthur Engoron. But just the other day on Fox News, one of the hosts, Gray Gutfeld, made this following statement. Now I want you all to listen to this and ask yourself why he feels free to do this, and listen to the danger of this, and listen to who he's really echoing and whose point of view he's really echoing and being a tool of. Let's hear that, Marie. While she's getting that ready, it's at the top of the hour now. 4 o'clock in the east, 3 p.m. in the central, 2 p.m. in the mountain, 1 p.m. out west. As soon as we hear this tape in this segment, we're going to go to break. But I want you all to hear this before we go to break, just to illustrate the danger of what's going on here.
Okay, here we go.
378 people sentenced for trespassing. So we all know the big cases
No.
in that, and
No, go ahead.
but 378 people sentenced in that who were trespassing. Many of them did time.
Well, there's only this is called a criminal mulligan, right? But only certain people get criminal mulligans. And January 6th protesters, they don't get criminal mulligans, and here's why: they're the oppressor. Right, so the oppressed get criminal mulligans. The people that are complaining, like us, we're actually oppressors, and we're losing power. So that's why we're upset. I just got a job at MSNBC. But let's compare the rights between criminals and victims. Okay, the criminals, they get a mulligan. They get to steal up to $900 worth of stuff. They can loiter, sleep, and shoot up in public areas, including playgrounds. They can loot and burn and call it social justice. They can pile up dozens of arrests and never do time. Meanwhile, what about us? Well, we have to change our lives to accommodate risk wherever we go. We have to move out of cities for the sake of the safety of our families and our own safety. That's what's happening. We're being driven out of cities by the oppressed. So I return to my imperfect analogy from yesterday. We had a war over slavery. We knew slavery was inhumane and immoral, but somehow we couldn't solve slavery peacefully. It was an evil. But one side refused to acknowledge that it was evil because it was too big of an admission for them to make. Doesn't that feel that way now? That this defiant refusal to reverse this decline argues against the survival of a country. What does that leave you with? It leaves you with you need to make war to bring peace. Because you have a side that cannot change, because then that means an admission that their beliefs have been corrupt all the time. So in a way, you have to force them to surrender.
Or we could make love, not war.
I tried that once.
Or we have an election.
I had to go to a doctor.
Election.
Yeah.
What if
No, elections don't work. We know that. We know they don't work.
They do.
Look what we have. Look what we have.
But
We had a moderate president, and we have crime exploding everywhere. We had a Democrat president promise that he was going to be modern, promise that he was going to unite the country, and now we have a terrible education system, we have no border, we have crime everywhere. Every facet of society is in peril and in chaos because our elections don't matter.
No, elections do matter. We don't need to go to war for it. We go to election booth and vote the people out who don't do the thing.
Oh, I wish I was as naive as you, Harold. And good evening.
All right, coming up, the meeting.
Okay, so that was Greg Gutfield. Now let me give you the background on this. What they were talking about was the recent rioting in Philadelphia, where groups of teenagers went through downtown Philadelphia, smashing windows and looting. Now I'm not condoning that at all, but what his take on this, his argument is that, and by the way, these cases have not been tried yet, so he's jumping to conclusions that have not been finalized yet. But he's saying that basically that the district attorneys there in the city of Philadelphia are going to let these looters off lightly because they're, quote, part of the oppressed group, unquote. Whereas the Jan 6 who tried to overturn our government. Now, let me just say this. I am not mitigating, or diminishing rather, I should say. I'm not diminishing what was done in Philadelphia. That was wrong, and those who were arrested and caught up in it should be prosecuted to the full letter of the law, whatever that is. But to compare what happened in Philadelphia, which was wrong, to the attempt to overthrow the government in the United States is not apples to oranges. That's number one. Notice the subtle language, though, folks, about the oppressor and the oppressed. That is not even thinly veiled racism, okay? What he's saying is that the majority of those who were arrested and prosecuted for their participation in January 6th were white, and that these looters were black. And so because they were black and they were, quote, members of the oppressed class, unquote, in his mind, that the district attorneys are going to let them off easy, which he does not know because, as I said, cases haven't even been tried, they haven't been adjudicated yet, so you don't know. You're making an assumption, and we all know what assume does, what assume makes out of you and me. I'll let that catch up with you later. He's making this, and then he gets to this comparison. He talks about the Civil War, and he talks about slavery, and says that basically there was one group of people who would not change their mind, so we had to go to a war over it, over the people that were wrong. And he's comparing those who oppose the ultra-right wing movement in this country of those who oppose what happened on January 6th. He's accusing them of condoning what went on in Philadelphia, number one, which they don't, because I don't, and he probably would put me in the middle as a member of that class. I do not condone that. And so he's saying that the only way that you can get the change, effective change in this country that he said that he feels need to take place is through war, through a civil war, through taking up arms, basically killing those who disagree with you. And his colleagues on the Fox program said, "No, you don't do that. You heard the clip. You vote them out. You vote out the people who won't make the changes that you feel need to be made." And Greg Gutfeld said, "Elections don't work. Elections don't count. You can't vote them out." And the reason that they're saying that is this: is that the Republican Party, since 1992, when it comes to a presidential election, a national election, the popular vote has won one election since 92. And that was in 2004 when George W. Bush was reelected, and he won both the popular vote and the electoral college over his Democratic counterpart, John Kerry. But every election from 92, Clinton in 92, Clinton in 96, Gore in 2000 won the popular vote. Obama in 08, Obama in 12, Hillary Clinton in 16 won the popular vote. And Joe Biden, yes, election deniers, won the popular and the electoral college in 2020. So he's saying that because he's saying that the majority of American people have rejected their policies. And so he said in his opinion, the only way that we can make America great again, my question is, listen, this is the greatest country in the world, despite all of its flaws. But my question is, when was it great? When you say make it great again, that means at one time it was and something happened, it wasn't. When was this so-called great period? Well, from 1776 to 1865, slavery was legal in America. Then you had American apartheid from 1865 to 1966, when the Civil Rights Act was enacted. Women couldn't vote up until 1920. Black people couldn't vote in this country until 1965. So when was this great period? During World War II, well, Nazi POWs had more rights than black American citizens did. But I digress. I don't want to go on that tangent. But he is saying that the only way that you can get this country back to the way it should be, in his opinion, and those who adhere to this opinion, including their leader, the 45th president of the United States, is by a violent upheaval. That's it. That is it. This is why, and his words have effect, and he knows it. I'm talking about Trump now. Just go back to January 6th. You've got to go down to the Capitol and you got to fight like hell to take back your country. That's what he said. Full knowledge, knowing that there were people that were armed that day. He knew that because Secret Service had told him that, and he wanted the armed people to be able to come into the ellipse where he was giving the speech because those were, quote, his people, and they weren't going to harm him, unquote. His words have meaning. As you just heard, one of his other minions, Steve Bannon, on his show yesterday, on his podcast, said about Attorney General Merrick Garland that when Trump is reelected, Merrick Garland should be arrested and prosecuted. My question is, arrested and prosecuted for what? What law is he violating? But that is revenge politics. That is retribution politics. And this is why I say that this man is a clear and present danger, clear and present threat to democracy in this country as we know it. So I don't care if Joe Biden is 100 years old next year. His age can't be the issue. If you want to have an American Madisonian democracy that you've had with all of its flaws since the foundation of this country, if you want our allies around the world to feel secure that they can count on this country, then you better make sure all of you that are within the sound of my voice come out and vote. And vote against Donald Trump. You don't even have to say you're voting for Joe Biden. I really don't care. Say you're voting for democracy, because all this other stuff, as important as it is, won't mean a hill of beans if this man gets back in office again. He is dangerous, people. And I'm not using hyperbole here. He himself said, I am running to get revenge and retribution on my enemies. And I chastise the press. I chastise the media, because the media normalizes this stuff. The media, there should have been an outcry when it was reported that he wanted General Milley executed. There should have been an outcry from the media for this. You don't normalize stuff like that. So the media is at fault as well. The media needs to sound the alarm. The media needs to do its freaking job. You're certainly not going to get it from Fox and Newsmax and One American Network. I'm talking about the mainstream media. And listen, it doesn't mean that you're supporting one party over the other. You are simply telling the facts and the truth. And the truth is that this man is a clear present danger to democracy in America as we know it. You're listening to The Right Side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure enough bring the noise. It's 13 minutes after the hour. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back at you with the rest of our show. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087.
Has trauma happened to you or your family? Trauma can affect all parts of your life, sometimes the ways you can't see. Violence can affect the way you eat, sleep. It causes you to lose focus, feel angry, afraid, or even use drugs or drinking as a way to escape. But we're here to tell you that violence doesn't have to keep hurting, and you can change your life starting now with help from the Trauma Recovery Center. We want you to take control of your life. Today can be the day. The Trauma Recovery Center offers real help for real needs in real time. They can give you these tools to rebuild your life and your health. Call today. They are free. They are 24/7. They are confidential. So if you want out and don't know where to start, call the Trauma Recovery Center. The Trauma Recovery Center will help you take back your life after violence starting today. Call today. Get the help you need today. Again, they can give you the tools to rebuild your life and your health. 216-644-5487. The Trauma Recovery Center of Northeast Ohio, also affiliated with the Center for Families and Children. The enchantments. it down. And you're on.
Welcome back to the right side. Our call-in number is 216-939-5087. 216-939-5087. We're going to switch gears here for a moment. We're going to go into what I call the candy store of life, and that's the world of sports after we talked about all this heaviness and what have you in the first segment of the broadcast. Let's go into the candy store right now. A lot of stuff going on, and this is a great time of the year as far as sports are concerned. You've got the college and NFL season are in full swing now. The Major League Baseball playoffs are about to begin, or have begun, I should say, with the wild card rounds have concluded. They all ended in 2-game sweeps. And now the division series begins today in both the American and National Leagues. Then the NBA training camps have opened. Preseason in the NBA starts tomorrow, I believe. And so by the time this month ends, you will have, and also the National Hockey League starts next week. On October the 10th, NHL starts its season. So by the month's end, you'll have the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, Major League Baseball, and college football all going on at the same time, basically. So if you're a sports fan, this is your favorite time of year. And speaking of that, I just want to look at a few things here. First of all, in the NBA, this blockbuster trade went down last week. We didn't have a chance last week. We had some technical issues, so we weren't able to come on last week. But blockbuster deal went down where the Portland Trailblazers traded multi-all-star and franchise star Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks in a 3-team deal that involved also the Phoenix Suns. Milwaukee sent Drew Holiday, all-star guard Drew Holiday, to Portland. Phoenix sent DeAndre Ayton to Portland as well. And then Portland sent Nurkic to the Suns. Those were the major. There were other players involved, but those were the major parties involved in that deal. However, when the deal was made, it was well known the fact that Drew Holiday wasn't going to stay in Portland because Portland is rebuilding. They've got young guard Scoot Henderson, who was their number 1 draft pick as a point guard, so it made Drew Holiday expendable. And so what Portland then did, they turned around and they sent Drew Holiday to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Malcolm Brogdon and also Robert Williams III. So a major shift, if you will, in the balance of power, especially in the NBA East, took place. The losers in this deal were disappointed, and the result of Miami Heat, who all along thought they were going to get Damian Lillard, but allegedly the holdup in the deal was that Portland wanted Bam Adebayo in exchange in that deal. Miami was unwilling to move on him, so that basically killed the trade talks between the two of them. Jimmy Butler, I don't know if you want to call it in protest or mourning or whatever it is. I'm just laughing because it was, I don't know, folks, if you've seen the pictures, you'll know what I'm talking about. But he showed up to the Heat's media day earlier this week with, how should I describe the dude? Have you seen like maybe a cross between Little Richard, or Prince,
Or Jermaine Stewart.
Or Jermaine Stewart, there you go. Jermaine Stewart, there you go. He showed up with that. Black fingernail polish and face piercing and all of that. Like, just something that you've never seen him do before. And like I said, I don't know, was he doing this? Was this his way of letting the Heat know that he wasn't happy with that they didn't land Dame Lillard and that he went of all places to an Eastern Conference rival in Milwaukee or what the case may be. And now reports today are saying that now he's talking about, he being Jimmy Butler, he's talking about launching a country music career. So, hey, to each his own. I hope it works out for him. But the East, the power has really shifted there in the East now. Between Milwaukee and Boston are the clear front runners in the East. Philly may or may not be the third best team in the East, as they've got the headache known as James Harden, or as some people call him when he comes into camp out of shape, and remains to be seen if that's what he's going to do this year. He's also been dubbed as James Larden by some. They've got that whole situation is a ticking time bomb because you know how he is. And James Harden, I said this about Kevin Durant once, but James Harden is even worse than Kevin Durant. He's one of the most miserable superstars I've ever seen because no matter where he goes and no matter what you do, he's never happy. He wanted out of Houston. He wanted to get to the Nets. And he didn't want to be at the Nets anymore because he didn't like it there. He didn't want to play with Kyrie Irving. So then the Nets traded him to Philadelphia. And now he got to Philadelphia, and now he's upset at the general manager. Say the general manager lied to him because he wanted to be traded to the Clippers. And the fact of the matter is this, folks, that I've never been, I'll just lay the cards on the table. I've never been a James Harden fan. Mm-hmm. He's a one-dimensional player. Yes. He's a great scorer. Now he's become a facilitator as well. I will give him that. But he's not a winner. It's simple as that. Anywhere James Harden goes, the team is not going to win. And when he's not getting his way, he pouts and he becomes a distraction. Mm-hmm. And it's just the Philadelphia, that whole situation there in Philly is one to keep your eye on when it comes to this season as to what's going to happen. Because there's been rumblings and rumors that Joel Embiid might want to go if he doesn't think they're trying to put a championship team around him. And they're limited in what they can do. Tyrese Maxey, in my opinion, is the second best player on that team. Tobias Harris, this is his contract year coming up now, so are they going to be able to retain his services? And you still have the elephant in the room known as James Harden. So can that destroy that situation? And then you've got the rest of the East, New York, Cleveland, Miami, all could be good teams, but I don't see any of those teams challenging especially the top two, maybe Philadelphia, but it's going to come down if everyone can remain healthy, that is, to Boston and Boston and Milwaukee as to who's going to come out the East. And we're going to do an NBA preview show in a couple of weeks or so, but just want to throw that out there. That right now, on paper, right now, it looks as though the Bucks are the favorites not only to come out of the East, but now they've been made the favorites over Denver to win it all this year. We'll see about that, and we'll talk about that, as I said, in a couple of weeks. But keep this in mind, people, that we've heard this before about these teams being constructed through trades in the offseason and that they're the team to beat, and it doesn't come to fruition. As recent as just about 2 or 3 seasons ago, when the aforementioned Nets got James Harden to go along with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, and they never even got to a conference finals, let alone to an NBA finals. And, we've seen it before, so I'm taking a wait-and-see attitude on it as well. Will Dame Lillard and Giannis work? Jay Crowder, who they didn't really need, and the Brooklyn Nets draft pick that they thought was going to be a high lottery pick that turned out to be the 8th pick in the draft when they drafted Colin Sexton. So you traded Kyrie Irving and you got Jay Crowder, who you didn't even last the whole season in Cleveland, Isaiah Thomas, who also didn't last the whole season, and Colin Sexton, or Kyrie Irving, who was one of the top 6 or 7 players in the league at the time that deal was made. So that's what I'm talking about here. You make the deal that's going to best benefit your organization, not the deal that placates the player to where he wants to go. So this is why I commend the Portland Trailblazers. They didn't bend, they didn't bow to the pressure that was being placed on them by Damian Lillard, probably placed on them by other forces within the Portland area and Miami to make this deal because Dame Lillard wanted to go to Miami. Even Dame Lillard's agent told other teams, if you're not Miami, don't even inquire because my client doesn't want to go there. Well, he doesn't have a choice because he's under contract. And by the way, it wasn't as though Portland was paying him peanuts either. He had just signed, I think the year or so before, a mega contract deal. So it wasn't like he was playing for peanuts either. So I commend Portland, and they made out pretty good on this. So I commend the Blazers and their organization. And, when the season starts, we'll see if the shift of power is really taking place. I won't even call it a shift of power, actually, because Milwaukee finished with the best record in the league last year. So it wasn't as though they were a Midland franchise or a team that was a fourth or fifth seed that just made the playoffs. They were the number one seed in the East last year and had the best record in the NBA last year, and then folded in the first round against Miami last year in the playoffs. So,
excuse me, Jeff. Dame Lillard's contract with Portland was for 2 years for $122 million, signed in July 2020.
So 121. That was so he's making $61 million a year.
Yes.
So again, hey, that's not peanuts, folks. I'd like to have $61 million a year.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't a power shift. It's just that the rich got richer. Is basically what happened here with Boston and Milwaukee here in the East. But again, as I said, we're going to do an NBA preview show in a few weeks, and we'll really get in depth in this. Not only in the East, we'll look at who we think are contenders in the East and also in the West, and who we think are going to go to the finals this year and also win the NBA title this year. But I want to look at the Major League playoffs Major League Baseball playoffs that are taking place right now. First of all, it's just an embarrassing shame what happened in Tampa, where you had playoff games, not games in the middle of April or a Tuesday night game in May, but Tampa, who won 99 games this year, Tampa, who's been a perennial playoff contender for the last 5 years, made the playoffs 5 years in a row, one of the lowest payrolls in baseball, but one of the best farm systems and player development programs in Major League Baseball. Tampa, who went to the World Series 3 years ago, granted that was in the COVID year, but they went to the World Series 3 years ago. 2 years ago, they won 100 games. So we're not talking about some middle-of-the-road franchise here. We're talking about, at least in the regular season, one of the top franchises in Major League Baseball. Do you know that their first playoff game on Tuesday, they drew 19,000 people to the game? This is the first time I've ever seen a playoff game where there were just rows and swaths of empty seats. Looked like a regular season game in mid-May or early May or mid-April. And then the following day, the day they were eliminated at home, there were 20,000 people. Now, they got a new stadium there. Well, they got approval to build a new stadium there. But it's not as though Tropicana Field is a dump where you don't want to come to or watch a game. We're talking about a playoff game there. My opinion is I don't feel that fan base, for whatever it is, deserves a franchise there, and they really need to move the franchise. And I'm not one who normally advocates that, because I live in a city who lost a franchise, who lost the NFL franchise in 1995. But when you have a so-called fan base that can only show up 19,000 was the lowest crowd ever for a playoff game since 1919, which was 104 years ago. And follow that up with 20,000 fans the next day in a 30, I think it was 38,000, almost 40,000 seat stadium. You don't deserve the franchise. Move it somewhere. Forget about building a new stadium there. Move it somewhere where people will support it. But I digress. So let's look at this. Let's look at these division series that start today. As a matter of fact, Baltimore and Texas are playing right now, and I'll get to that one last. But let me just look at these series. So the first one I want to look at is Atlanta. No, I'm going to say that. First one I want to do actually is the Dodgers, and Los Angeles Dodgers are playing the Arizona Diamondbacks, who surprised me and the Milwaukee Brewers by not only winning that mini-series, that three-game mini-series, but sweeping it in Milwaukee. I'm glad they got to pop the champagne the other day, because that's the last champagne they're going to pop, because they're going to get steamrolled by the Dodgers. The Dodgers dominated them during the regular season, and the Dodgers are going to dominate them in this series. This is a 5-game series. I've got the Dodgers in 4. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers swept them 3 straight. And this is something, now this is a pet peeve I have with baseball, in that baseball needs to reseed once the first round has taken place. Because the Atlanta Braves finished with the best record in baseball. Atlanta won 104 games this year. And they get a tough matchup in this division series in Philadelphia, who's going to give them all that they can ask for. The same team that eliminated Atlanta last year from the playoffs, after again Atlanta had won 100 games and eliminated Atlanta in the division series last year. Atlanta should not be playing Philadelphia right now, because the seeding now, if you look at the records, it would be Atlanta the 1 seed, the Dodgers the 2 seed, the Phillies the 3 seed, and the Diamondbacks the 4 seed. So right now, if they did it the way they should be doing it, really, Atlanta should be playing, the Braves should be playing the Diamondbacks, and the Dodgers should be playing the Phillies right now. Atlanta's going to have a tough matchup. And Atlanta led all the major leagues in home runs this year. They tied the single-season record that was set by the Minnesota Twins back in 2021. They tied it this year. They've got the MVP of the league. In my opinion, I think it's hands down. It's not even close. It's Ronald Acuna Jr., who had over 30 home runs and over 70 stolen bases this year. They have Matt Olson, who had over 50 home runs this year. And their lineup is power packed from top to bottom with speed, power. They're just an awesome offensive team. They've got Max Fried as their number 1 starter. They've got a very strong bullpen. So they should be the favorites in this series. However, the Phillies can hit with them, with Kyle Schwarber, with Bryce Harper, with Trey Turner. They've got a lineup that can hit as well. They can hit the long ball. They can score as well. Atlanta is going to have to hold on to home field advantage. If Philly splits in Atlanta, it's going to make it very difficult for the Braves to win the series, because if Philadelphia goes home 1-1, and that crowd and that atmosphere at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia can make it very difficult on opposing teams there. The energy there was coming through the television set the other night. But I do think Atlanta's going to hold on. I got Atlanta winning that series in 5, but it's going to go to the limit. I've got Atlanta in 5 in that series. Although a Philadelphia victory wouldn't surprise me, but Atlanta's the best team in baseball, so I'm going to lean on that. I've got Atlanta winning that series in 5. In the American League, you've got, I won't even call them the upstart, because you're not an upstart when you win over 100 games this year, like the Baltimore Orioles won 101 games this year. So I'm not even going to call them upstart. They were upstarts last year, where they just barely missed the playoffs last year. And folks, think about this. Just 2 years ago, The Orioles were the worst team in baseball. They lost 110 games in 2021, just 2 years ago. But because of their high draft picks and the development of their farm system, and when they promoted their catcher, Adley Rushman, from the minor leagues last year, they've taken off ever since. Ever since they promoted Adley Rushman last year from the minor leagues to the big league club last year, Baltimore has had a winning record. And they took it to the next level this year by winning arguably the best division in baseball. I don't even think it's an argument. When you had the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, and the Rays, and three of those teams in that division, the Orioles, the Rays, and the Blue Jays, made the playoffs this year. And you know how the Yankees and the Red Sox, by the way, it does my heart well to know that neither the Yankees or the Red Sox, either one, made the playoffs. Yay! I love that. Wish the Dodgers wouldn't have made it either. Then that would really made my day. But I digress. So they're not an upstart team. You've got them playing the Texas Rangers in the American League Division Series. The Rangers could have won the American League West, but lost to the Mariners the last game of the season to put them in a first place tie with the Astros. And because Houston had the tiebreaker, because they won the season series against the Rangers, Houston was the division winner. Texas had to go play in the wild card round against the Rays, which we just talked about. They swept the Rays in that series. So I look at this series. I like Baltimore starting pitching. Grayson Rodriguez, the young phenom of their staff. They called up their bullpen. Their back of their bullpen took a hit when Bautista went down with the injury, but they've seemed to pick that up. I love their lineup with Mountcastle and Santander and Gunnar Henderson, of course, the Ashley Rushman that I just mentioned. I love their lineup. And the thing about the Orioles is they're going to be around for a while because they have 6 of the top 100 prospects in baseball in their farm system. So they're going to be around for a while. Texas led the American League in scoring and led the American League in home runs as well, so they can hit. Their bullpen, though, has been shaky, especially the back end of the bullpen. They do have Bruce Bochy, who's one of the best managers in baseball, managed the Giants to 3 World Series championships when he managed there. But I'm going to give the Orioles a slight edge in this series. I think the Orioles are going to win the series. I picked Baltimore in 4. Wouldn't be surprised if we win 5, but I got the Orioles winning that. And then Houston, the winners of the West and the winners of the the AL Comedy Central is what I called it all year. The Minnesota Twins won the division where they were the only team that finished over 500. Minnesota can pitch. They've got the best ERA out of any of the teams in the American League. They're still in the playoffs. The back of their bullpen is awesome, especially with their closer, Duran, who has just a filthy wipeout curveball to go with a 100-mile-an-hour plus unhittable at times fastball to close out games. Sonny Gray, the leader of their staff, Joe Ryan. Their pitching is solid. Their offense is okay. They're not the bashers that they were of a couple of years ago when, as I said, they set the record that the Braves tied this year in home runs. But they can hit the long ball. The Astros are the defending world champions. They've got that. They've got Dusty Baker, one of the best managers in baseball in their dugout. They're veteran to this. They're battle-tested, battle-proven. Verlander, Framber Valdez, although Framber Valdez has been up and down this year. Their bullpen is solid. I like the Astros in this series as well, and I like the Astros to win in 5. So those are your winners in the National League: Atlanta Dodgers. In the American League, the Orioles and the Astros, and we'll give our World Series predictions when that is over. I will say personally, I would like to see the Baltimore Orioles win it all this year. Uh, I'm not a fan of the Dodgers at all. I still have something in me about the Braves because they beat my team in the '95 World Series. I still, haven't got over that yet. And I'm not a big fan of the Twins and the Rangers. They're all right. But I really like to see the Orioles, especially a team that came from literally the dregs 2 years ago when they lost 110 games to bounce back 2 seasons later, win over 100 games, and could go to the World Series. I'm rooting for the Orioles, but we'll see what the series turns out to be. Okay, so there's our playoff predictions for the division series in baseball. Now for our NFL picks, and by the way, I should have said this when I gave the baseball predictions, so I'll say it now. It applies to both the baseball predictions and the football predictions. These are for entertainment purposes only. Do not go out and bet your house on it because you can't come and live with me if you're homeless, okay? I'm just saying. So we're going to look at 5 games this week. The first one I want to look at is the Jacksonville Jaguars travel to, they're in England, in London, where they were last week, and they beat the Atlanta Falcons, and they're playing the Buffalo Bills. And what's interesting about this, folks, is that Jacksonville has played so many games in England that they're almost like the home team there in England, but this is Buffalo's home game, if you can understand that. But anyway, nonetheless, Jacksonville stayed in England over the week because they were there last week, as we said, and they defeated the Atlanta Falcons. So now they've got Buffalo coming in. Buffalo coming in after their thrashing of the then undefeated and looked to be unstoppable Miami Dolphins. And we did last week predict that game. We predicted Buffalo. We told you to take Buffalo and that Buffalo would cover, and they did. They thrashed Miami and beat them by 28, by 4 touchdowns last week. So this week in London at Tottenham Stadium, where the Tottenham Spurs soccer team plays, Buffalo is hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Buffalo is favored by 5. The over-under in the game is 48.5. I say take Buffalo and take the over. Buffalo is on a roll right now. They've overcome whatever it was that was ailing them in that opening game against the Jets. They're on the roll right now. And so I look for Buffalo not only to win, but for Buffalo to cover tomorrow. So I say go take Buffalo. If you're going to bet the over-under, bet the over on that. And take Buffalo to win and to also cover. Win outright and to cover the point spread. The next one that I want to look at is Baltimore. The first place Baltimore Ravens travel to Pittsburgh tomorrow to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. Baltimore's 3-1, coming off of a thorough beatdown last week of the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland, 28-3, where they dominated on both sides of the ball, forced 3 turnovers against making his first start, rookie quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The Baltimore running game came alive against a very good and stout defense last week, and Lamar Jackson had a great game where he threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for 2 touchdowns, and the Baltimore defense kept the Cleveland offense in check the whole game. Pittsburgh went to Houston last week. This one I got wrong. I didn't think that rookie quarterback would be able to beat the Steelers. Well, not only did former Buckeye quarterback C.J. Stroud throw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, but they thoroughly defeated the Steelers 30-6 last week. So how do we see this game? Well, Baltimore is favored by 4.5. The over-under on this game is 38. I look for the Ravens to continue to roll. And if the Ravens win tomorrow, and I know it's early in the season, but they can really put a lock on the AFC North championship, of course, foreseeing that Lamar Jackson stays healthy all year, of course, because that would give them 3 division wins, but not only 3 division wins, but 3 division road game wins at Cincinnati in week 2, at Cleveland last week, and at Pittsburgh tomorrow. And I look for that to happen. Pittsburgh's offense is in disarray. The fans there want to put offensive coordinator Matt Canada on a rail and run him out of town. The love affair, or the high expectations and the bloom, if you will, of the rose on Kenny Pickett has come off. Remember, he was the darling of the preseason, and many were predicting Pittsburgh to be the sleeper team and Kenny Pickett to have a great year. Well, Kenny Pickett is Kenny Pickett, and that's basically what he's played like thus far this season. So I say take the Ravens, take the under, take the Ravens to cover, and the Ravens lead Pittsburgh tomorrow 4-1, while Pittsburgh falls to 2-3. Next game I want to look at is the 1-3 Cincinnati. The 1-3. Now let me stop. If anyone would have told you just a month ago that at this juncture of the season that the Cincinnati Bengals would be 1-3, you would probably say, in the words of Stephen A. Smith, put the weed down. But the Cincinnati Bengals are 1-3, going to Arizona rather, to play the 1-3 Arizona Cardinals. Arizona, yeah, I could expect to be 1-3 this time, but Cincinnati's offense is 31st in the league in passing yards and efficiency. 31st. That would have been another put the weed down if I would have told you that just a month ago. It's obvious that Joe Burrow's injury is hampering him and that offense. That's why they can't make big plays down the field, because he's basically just motionless. He can't move in the pocket. He can't really push off that leg to throw the deep ball with the zip that needs to be thrown. This is why Jamar Chase is frustrated. This is why Cincinnati is having some struggles on offense. This is why they went to Tennessee last week and got thoroughly thrashed by the Titans, beat them 27-3 last week. Do you realize that the Bengals in 2 games this year have not scored a touchdown in 2 games this year? Or was it 27-3 or 27-6? Regardless, it was a blowout, regardless of what the score was. The Cardinals last week got their comeuppance when they ran into the Eagles. They had beaten the Cowboys the week before that. The line on the game is Cincinnati by 3. The over-under is 44.5. I say Cincinnati by 4.5. I'm sorry. No, I was right. Cincinnati by 3. The over-under is 44.5. I say Cincinnati will cover. They'll get their second win. And if you're going to bet the over-under, take the under. The fourth game that I want to look at is the aforementioned Houston Texans that I talked about just a few minutes ago when we were talking about the Steelers. Travel to Atlanta. Houston is 2-2. So is Atlanta. Atlanta is a 1.5-point favorite in this game. C.J. Stroud is, at least through 4 games, has shown that he is the class of the rookie quarterbacks of this class of Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young that have come out of this draft so far. He's thrown for 1,000 yards, over 1,000 yards in his first 4 games. He has yet to throw interceptions. He was not sacked last week against the Steelers, which tells me that either one of 2 things: either he's getting rid of the ball quickly, or his line is protecting him. I think it's both. He has Laramie Tunstall as his left tackle, one of the best left tackles in the National Football League. Atlanta's coming off a defeat in London last week at the hands of the Jaguars. Desmond Ridder is their quarterback. So with that said, I am saying, and the over-under in this game is 41.5. I say take Houston on the road. I'm going with the road dog on this, that Houston not only is going to cover, but they're going to win the game, and I think they're going to win it fairly easily. And I say take the over on this. So look for the Houston Texans to go 3-2 to be the surprise team thus far. DeMeco Ryans, the former defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers, has that defense playing really well also. The last one I want to look at is the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football travel to Levi Stadium in Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers. This is a rematch of a playoff game last year. There's a lot of hype behind this game. This features two of the best, if not the two best defenses in the NFL. San Francisco was a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under in this game is 45. How do I see this game? Dak Prescott said last week that if you want to, quote, piss me off, then keep mentioning what happened in the playoff game last year against San Francisco when the game was 9-6 and Dallas was driving for either what would have been a game-tying field goal or perhaps a winning touchdown because it was late in the game and he threw an interception late in the game. San Francisco got the ball back, basically ran the clock out until Dallas got it one more time and had that ridiculous play where they had Ezekiel Elliott playing center. So this game there's a lot of hype going into this game. The 49ers, through the first 4 games of the year, have shown to be the best team in the NFL. They're strong on the defensive line and the offensive line. They've got a cadre of weapons with Kittles and Deebo Samuels and Brandon Ayuk. Christian McCaffrey has, if the MVP of the league doesn't go to a quarterback, is really an early candidate for MVP. He's staying healthy. Brock Purdy has not lost a game that he started since he started. The Cowboys have a lot to prove. Jerry Jones, their owner, basically came out this week and said that this is a measuring stick game. So with all that said, all this hype behind it and all this said, how do we see it? Well, I see it as a close game. I see it that if you're going to bet the over-under, take the under on it. But I'm taking the 49ers in this game. I do think that they won't cover. I think it's going to be a close game. They're 4.5-point favorite. I've got them by a field goal. I got San Francisco winning 20-17. So those are the picks for the NFL picks for those 5 games. Do with them as you wish. Govern yourself accordingly. As we come to the end of our show, as we do on each week, we give our hero and our hero of the week. Our hero of the week is superfan Peter Nab. Peter Nab is a Cleveland Guardians fan, and the reason why we call him superfan is that he attended all 162 games this year that the Guardians played. Not just the 81 games that were here in Cleveland, but also every game that was on the road. And the reason that we are saying he's our hero of the week is not only because of that, but also, and this is the real reason, he has suffered from cerebral palsy since birth. It makes it very difficult for him to get around. And he said that he did this to be an inspiration to others who are suffering cerebral palsy, so that to show them that they too can do anything that they set their mind to do. So there's a great story about him. You can go on Cleveland.com. You can go on Fox8News.com here on the internet and read this full story about him. Time purposes will not allow me to go into the full story. I heard an interview with him on a local radio station here in town. And so for being an inspiration, for showing that a disability will not stop you from doing what you set your mind out to do, Peter Nab, you are our hero of the week on the right side. Our zero of the week is the House of Representatives of the United States government. And if you need reasons why for that, go back and listen to the first hour of this show. You've been listening to the right side on No Static Radio. We don't bring the static, but we sure don't bring the noise. But right now I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your time, and until next Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, Shalom.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in to The Right Side with your host, Jeff Doggett, on a station where we don't bring no static, but we shouldn't bring the noise on staticradio.net. We want you to make sure that you guys check us out on social media. We absolutely love to hear from you on Facebook.com/No Static Radio, on X, formerly known as YouTube at No Static _radio, on Instagram at The Real _No Static Radio, on YouTube at No Static Radio, and our newest platform, Discover.tv, which is truly a work in progress, you guys. Listen, also, if you like to listen to replays of this show and others on staticradio.net, please make sure you check us out on Mixler or Mixcloud.com. You see at the bottom, just type that in and boom, you've got us. Also, if you like to listen to uninterrupted listening experience here with us at No Static Radio, check us out on tunein.com, liveonlineradio.net, or MediaQ for continuous uninterrupted. That means you don't have to refresh the page, you guys. Just sit back, let it do its own thing. It might throw in a couple of commercials for your entertainment purposes only, and of course, because they have to pay the bills, at tunein.com, liveonlineradio.net, or MediaQ, again, for continuous streaming uninterrupted of this show and all others on the platform. And for all things No Static Radio, including up-and-coming events, merchandise, and an in-depth look at all our great show hosts here, please check out our website at www.nostaticradio.net, you guys. And listen, another sensational Saturday. What can I say? And it's the fall time, you guys. Such a beautiful time of the year. I know a lot of people don't favor the weather, but I myself do enjoy the fall weather. I love when it's not too hot and not too cold, And sometimes I don't mind the cold. Yeah, see, that's the Cleveland in me, though. But you guys, on another sensational Saturday, we'd like to thank you so much for tuning in with us, and taking time out of your day to hear what we have to say and what we got going on. We truly appreciate it, you guys. And we only hope to add more to your listening and viewership experience each and every time we get on the airways. We know over the past few weeks and over the past couple of months, we've had some connectivity issues, but trust me, we work every day to make sure that your experience is a great experience, and we work to make sure that the things that we use here, sometimes we have to switch out and go back to old stuff because, hey, listen, another sensational Saturday. You guys made it possible. So thank you so much. And you know what it is. We've got more music for your listening pleasure here on your voice of the revolution on staticradio.net. Powered by Google, partner with Colors, and sponsored by Lamont Avenue Wines Design exclusively. And welcome to the family, the dedicated Senior Medical Center. You guys, have a great one. Take care of yourself. Take care of others. There's no Browns game tomorrow, but there is the Steelers versus the Ravens, and also Cincinnati later on at 4 or 5 p.m. So make sure you guys check that out and other games if you're interested. But, when we don't have our team, there's nothing like watching some divisional rivalry continue to go on and, make things a little juicy. Yeah, we love sports here in No Static Radio, and that's something that will never change. So, yeah, you guys, once again, enjoy this sensational Saturday, your weekend. If you go to church on Sunday mornings, and even today, if you're a 7-day Adventist, pray for me and pray for this business. And we'll talk to you guys next week, starting out with Black Anthem on Monday morning. Until then, peace, love, and warmth. All right, peace.